I think the biggest one, and it's why I'm where I am today, is not winning the world championship of public speaking. What we're doing right here, most people will not volunteer to do this. Ultimately, what people buy into is a new life. Now, if you don't fix this problem, we got to let you go. Now, the last part that I find too many coaches and trainers leaving out is what's called the new life. Don't view anything as a failure, because maybe you weren't supposed to accomplish that specific goal because there was a bigger one waiting for you. I was on stage with them, and if you look at it from a credential standpoint, I had no business being there.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, people who's watching this video. It gives me immense pleasure and honor to have my next guest on the show, Inspirational Interviews with Haritosh. Today, I have somebody who's a certified financial planner, somebody who's a speaking coach, somebody who has written a couple of books, the author of the book on storytelling and sell more with stories, and who's also a coach with Cincinnati TEDx since 2015. But for me, he's more of a faculty in Stage Time University, a university which I'm connected for last one and a half years, and I've learned so much. So welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show.
Thank you, Haritosh. I really appreciate that. I'll give you one slight correction on the introduction. I was a certified financial planner, but I'm not doing that anymore. I'm committed to helping people become better speakers and communicators now.
Thank you. And that shows how much financial knowledge I have. So,
Okay.
All right. So in this show, it's more of a question and answer. I'll ask you a few questions, and I'm pretty sure your answers and responses will amaze me. So let me ask you I'm just trying to connect the dots for my audience, financial planner to public speaker to TEDx coach and to Stage Time University. So if you have to summarize and connect the dots for our audience in next few minutes, how would you do about that?
I got started in coaching because back in, it was 2008, I was a financial planner, and I was giving workshops in the arena. Well, actually, it started long before that. 1994 is when it really was. I have to think about my own timeline. I was given the task of presenting financial retirement workshops in my community. I thought I was doing a good job. I did what everybody else did. I put a lot of PowerPoint slides together, and back then we used the overhead projector. So we used slides whatever we had to, and I just gave everybody everything I knew, not knowing that was not what they wanted. It wasn't until we got a bunch of feedback forms and my boss handed them to me one day while we were meeting in his office, and he said, "Take a look at this." And they said things like, "Too much information. I feel like I've been hit by a fire hose. Does this guy ever stand still? Does he ever stop talking?" I mean, it was just one right after the other. And at the end of that meeting, he said, "Now, if you don't fix this problem, we got to let you go, because your job is to get people to come in here, and that's not happening." So it was out of desperation that I looked for a solution. I just thought you were the born a great speaker or you weren't. So in my search, I found Toastmasters International.
Right.
And it was right away that I learned that great speakers are born, or they're made, they're not born.
Right.
And it was through that association that I eventually met some of the world champions like Darren LaCroix, who founded Stage Time University, and Craig Valentine, Ed Tate, and they all became mentors of mine. They saw that I was a willing student. If they put a program out, I invested in it, didn't question it. So as time went on, I got very involved in speaking, got involved with the National Speakers Association, and then got certified as a coach with Craig Valentine in 2011.
Nice.
I was always looking for opportunities to coach, which led me to TEDx Cincinnati in 2015. I went to one of their auditions. I told the organizer, "Hey, I'm a coach." We had a few meetings and brought me on board. And then around that same time, Darren LaCroix asked me to become one of the coaches at Stage Time University. So that's kind of the short version of how I got to where I am today. And I feel so much passion about helping people become better speakers and communicators that I left the financial world because I feel like this is my calling.
Sure, awesome. That's amazing. So, very succinct summary, if I have to say, but great. So, one of the questions that I really ask all the people who come to this show is about failures, because I believe we all do enough of bragging about success, but behind success, there is one or two big failures that we learn from. So, if I may ask you, what has been your one or two failures, and what have been your learning out of those?
I think the biggest one, and it's why I'm where I am today, is not winning the World Championship of Public Speaking. Mm-hmm. I met Darren in 2002. Around that same time, I had met David Brooks, who helped coach Darren. David was a previous world champion too. And when I started to see how involved this group of world champions was, I thought I wanted to be a part of that. So if I was going to be a part of that, what did I have to do? Win the world championship, right? So I competed, and a couple times I got to what would now be called the semifinal round. Mm-hmm. I did fairly well, but never won. What I didn't realize was I was being watched by these world champions. They were watching me as I invested in their programs, and I did everything they said. I didn't question them because they've succeeded. They're not just world champions, they're successful professionals. So what I viewed as a failure along the way, I kept studying and trying to learn more and more. And eventually when they asked me to volunteer for events, I did that. And I got on stage eventually as a coach with Darren, Patricia Fripp, who's a Hall of Fame speaker, Ford Sakes, a Hall of Fame speaker, and Ed Tate. I was on stage with them. And if you look at it from a credential standpoint, I had no business being there. I didn't have their titles and their accolades, but I had worked really hard by just following their format and doing what they said. Mm-hmm. So that was a failure in a sense that I didn't get this title that I thought I needed to be within that group. But through the failure, I kept working harder and harder to accomplish this. I wasn't getting that goal, but I reached another one, which was the bigger goal. So the point I tell when I tell that story is, don't view anything as a failure, because maybe you weren't supposed to accomplish that specific goal because there was a bigger one waiting for you.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. So right after winning World Champion of Public Speaking, Darren Lacroix made Sage Time University, and then you have a bunch of world champions out there, and you are among them without winning World Champion. I mean, that in itself is a big achievement to say. Yeah, so congratulations to you. And yeah.
Well, and sometimes you're lucky. I mean, I took a lot of times luck plays. You got to be in the right place. So I met David Brooks, that led me to Darren, and Darren led me to all these other folks. But behind that, a lot of people have met them. It's when they saw that I was willing to do that work, and I was just working because I just wanted to know more about it. I didn't, other than being a world champion for a long time, I didn't have any other goals, but I just kept learning more, and they saw that I was willing to do all that work.
Indeed, it signifies the phrase that God helps those who help themselves. So you kept on working, and indirectly you went to where it would have been. So, all right. So another aspect of your profile is that TEDx talker, and there's a lot of things happening in TEDx. Now they're having virtual TEDx talk. So if I have to ask you, what exactly is the difference between a public speaking like we do in Toastmasters and other places, keynotes, etc., and a TEDx talk? What would be the 2-3 main differences that you would say?
I think the most glaring difference is that a professional speaker often stands up to motivate, especially keynote speakers. Mm-hmm. Possibly education through breakouts or training. The TEDx speaker is giving you a different insight on a topic that's already been talked about. That's the big, they don't really want motivation on TEDx, although I've seen some TED or TEDx. Mm-hmm. But what they want is a unique perspective on a topic that's out there. Typically, I don't hear too many new ideas. Maybe in the science and technology realm I do,
Right.
But I've heard something as simple as how to dry your hands.
Wow.
Really. And it's a powerful story. It's so good because this gentleman shows how to take one square of paper towel to wipe your hands. But his premise behind this is how many trees could we save if we stopped wasting paper towels and toilet paper? So it's a simple premise, but it's a very different twist on it. I've heard one of the most watched out there is from a gentleman named James Veitch, I think. He talks about a humorous way how to answer emails. Okay. How many people have talked about that? Many, but it's a different perspective with a lot of humor. So give us a different idea, different twist on an old idea. And Ted loves that. A lot of professional speaking is a lot of times the same old message. And yeah, it's inspirational, motivational, but I don't see a lot of new ideas. That's why the great professional speakers are the ones who have a different idea, typically in business.
Awesome. And I think that is the reason Ted says that it is ideas worth sharing, not the stories or not the motivation worth sharing. I like.
Right.
So my next question to you is more about the current situation. And when the 2020 hit us, there was a big elephant on the world called COVID-19 or Corona. And I know because we have been doing a lot in Space Time University, which really help us. So what has the impact of Corona being on your business and on your coaching, and what really helped you in these months?
I always have to qualify this by saying it really hasn't, because my work with Stage Time University that you're also a part of, I've been coaching online since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't done a lot of speeches online before this year, but I've done coaching, I've hosted online events. So for me, it was nothing new. In fact, I was telling people through various networking groups I'm in last year, hey, we should really start to do these virtual calls on Zoom. It's a time saver. And they pushed back. Oh, no. I have to meet face to face. That's the only way I'll meet. And I thought, okay. I had no idea what was coming. When I talked with people 2 or 3 months into COVID, they said things like, this is really great because I'm saving a lot of travel time. Mm-hmm. This is what I was trying to tell you for months. So from that standpoint, again, you have to be lucky. And I hate to use the word luck and tie it with COVID, but from the business impact of COVID, I was fortunate that I had already been doing this. What I had to do was ramp up my game, so to speak. I had to invest in more equipment. Mm-hmm. But getting used to talking to a camera, I'd already done that. I mean, at this point, I've done over 500 virtual presentations, coaching calls, hosting of events. So that wasn't an issue. What I immediately saw is that people were going to get very anxious about doing this when they'd never done it before. And that's where they needed help. So I did shift the focus of my business for the first 5 or 6 months to helping with online presentations. I still do that, but it all comes back to you have to have a good presentation and good stories behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And we know every week you do host a call in Stage Time University, which is totally done through Zoom. So yeah, that really helped you. Now, one last bit that you said about storytelling, and that is where I would like to bring my next question is, and that is getting really popular, that everywhere you go, you talk about storytelling. So what do you think are elements of a good storytelling, and what can we as a learning speakers can do to make our stories more impactful?
This is a really good question, Haritosh, because you're right. I see, and it's probably because of what I do and you're involved in speaking too. We see this all the time now. Tell stories. What I'm finding is that a lot of folks, the coaches out there, the books, the articles, aren't talking about how to write and create a succinct business story. And all great memorable stories going back 4,000 years have some common elements. It is a flawed character who is thrust into a situation, typically they didn't ask for. They develop this goal, but in the pursuit of that goal, they really struggle. This is where their flaws come out. Along the way in that struggle, which is the conflict, they meet a mentor or a guide. someone who gives that character new insight, new perspective, and wisdom that enables them to take a new kind of action.
Mhm.
And through that new action, they eventually succeed.
Yeah.
Now, the last part that I find too many coaches and trainers leaving out is what's called the new life. What is the new life that character's leading? And the reason that is so important is that if you're in a business or selling situation, ultimately what people buy into is a new life. It could be that they want to feel better physically. They want to lose weight. They want better relationships. They want more money. They want less financial anxiety.
Right.
You name it, people are looking for that new way of being. If you don't show that and you don't focus on the internal benefit of that, more confidence, happier, less stress, etc., your story's not going to have an impact. And as part of Stage Time, we will coach stories 2 or 3 times a week, and we see this frequently.
Yep.
Too much attention is given to a lot of minutiae and details, and we're not seeing the emotional impact that the story has in the end. So that's what will help you stand out with a world-class story.
Thank you. I think that's a really valid point. We sometimes leave the impact of the story or the insight that we get from our mentor or the person who has transformed us, and that leads us to making it a little bit bland. All right, so we are coming towards the end of this particular interview, and I want to ask you about top 2-3 tips that you want to give to anyone. Many of the audiences of this particular channel is young folks who are probably graduating or getting into corporate job, and if you have to give 2-3 tips to them in terms of communication or in terms of how do they present themselves better, what would those be?
The first is do it. One of the biggest challenges I see with speakers, storytellers, online presenters is that they think they need to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you're never going to be perfect. Secondly, what audiences want is connection, not perfection. There will be mistakes. When you're standing in front of a group and speaking, you'll make mistakes. That's okay. Now, you don't want to make mistakes every 10 seconds. That gets annoying. But if you occasionally forget a line, if you flub up, if you say a word incorrectly, guess what? You're human. You're just like me sitting in the audience.
Yeah.
When you're presenting online, I promise you, you're going to make mistakes. There will be technical glitches. It will not be as smooth as you would like. That's technology. You've seen me on these calls, Haritosh.
I know.
I make mistakes every week. But here's the thing. When you make a mistake, don't call a lot of attention to it. Audiences, whether they're sitting in front of you or they're on the other end of a camera, want one thing. They want new perspective. They want ideas on how to make their lives a little better. They want that new life that a good story talks about. If you make an error, they're not going to remember that if you give them value. So first and foremost, just get out there and keep doing it. It's like anything else. If you drive a car, if you ride a bike, you learn a new sport, a new habit of any kind, it takes a while. It is uncomfortable. It's really important to embrace that discomfort. Because when you're doing what we're doing right here, most people will not volunteer to do this.
Yep.
If you're willing to do that, and what we talked about to start this interview, the failure, you're not failing. You're just learning ways to do it better next time. Second, trust that you have stories. I don't care if you're 20 years old and you haven't been in the business world before, you still have a perspective. There are reasons you do what you do. Those stories will connect you. Our childhood stories are the most important we have because those are the foundation of what makes us who we are. The grandparents who influenced you, the parents, the teachers, those will carry through for the rest of your life.
Right.
And you will be able to teach other people. Actually, your influencers, your parents, your grandparents, will teach other people who they'll never meet through you. So just trust that you have a story that's worth hearing because you do. Those are the two biggest ones I would say.
Thank you, Michael. That was amazing. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, so where can they reach out to, and what kind of offerings do you have?
Sure. You can The easiest way is to just email me, mike@speakingcpr.com. You can visit my website, which is speakingcpr.com. It's kind of hard to miss it here with the sign. I'm always backwards on this. Here we go. I got the mirror effect on today. If you write to me, I'll get you out a couple of resources. One is called 52 Storytelling Tips. Mm-hmm. It's a weekly 5-minute audio lesson. The idea behind this is 1 week after another, you start stacking information on top of another. Make you at least 3 times better as a storyteller within a year. And the other is a report that I put together called Stop Zoom Burnout Now. There is a belief that a lot of people are suffering from Zoom fatigue or Zoom burnout, and I don't believe it. And here's why. Typically, when people are saying that, I've got so much screen time, I'm tired of looking at a screen, what are we doing? We stop looking at a work camera and we start looking at this. Yes. Right? Or we go binge watch Netflix. Screen time isn't the problem. Poor presentations are the problem. So what this report talks about is 34 different ways you can enliven your online talk to make sure that people want to stay on, that they don't go looking at their phone. Mm-hmm. So if you write to me, mike@speakingcpr.com, I'll make sure you get copies of those. There's no cost, no obligation to you. You won't get spammed. But that'll give you some further insight into this topic.
Thank you so much, Mike. And I'll put those information in our video description as well, so people would be able to find that out. So thank you so much. This was very valuable for me personally. First of all, I do this because I get a lot of value out of these interviews, and also people who will watch this. So thank you so much. And for all our viewers, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep going out of your comfort zone. This is Haritosh, and I'll be back with another episode of Inspirational Interviews.